Hey, I'm Ross Kaminsky, host of the Ross Kaminsky Show, weekday mornings from 5 to 10 a.m. on Talk Radio 630 KHOW in Denver. And I thought I would share with you, in case you're interested, my opinions on the statewide ballot issues facing Colorado voters this year. I'm not going to cover votes for individual candidates in this video, just the ballot issues that are statewide. In other words, every voter in Colorado will see these issues. There are plenty of other issues that you'll only see if you live in a particular jurisdiction, such as a tax hike or bond issue for your local school district. I'm only going to cover statewide issues. And we're going to start with Amendment T, and I'm going to talk through each of these, and then I'll show you my vote, despite what Mitch Morrissey, the DA of Denver, says may be an illegal act on my part. Come and get me, Mitch. Anyway, Amendment T amends the state constitution to prohibit what they call slavery or involuntary servitude as punishment for a crime. Amendment T would encourage lawsuits against the state for requiring prisoners to work or perform community service. At least that's my opinion, and that's why I am against Amendment T. I think it's perfectly fine to make prisoners do a little work, cleaning up the roads and all that sort of thing as part of their punishment for what they have done, earning their place back in society. Amendment U. Shall there be an amendment to the Colorado Constitution concerning an exemption from property taxation? Blah, 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 blah. It's a bunch of legalese, but basically it ends a kind of property tax for the use or lease of government-owned property where the value to the leaseholder is under $6,000. And basically what this does is eliminates a tax that costs more to collect than it generates for local governments. So I am in favor of Amendment U. Now let's get on to some of the bigger issues. Amendment 69, this is one of the biggest ones in part because a lot of the rest of the country is looking at how Colorado will deal with Amendment 69, which basically creates socialized medicine in the state of Colorado by enacting effectively a 10% increase on pretty much every form of income in the state. Now, they're creating a program, they would create a program called Colorado Care, and it's a massive bureaucracy that would bankrupt the state, but not before chasing huge numbers of jobs away, which is why even most leading Democrats oppose it. And frankly, even on the radio show, I haven't spent much time talking about this simply because I believe Amendment 69 is going to lose by a very, very wide margin. But everybody should vote against Amendment 69. That is, unless your goal in life is to empty Colorado of people and then have the state to yourself, because that's what would happen if this passes. Now, Amendment 70. Amendment 70 reads pretty simply on the ballot. Shall there be an amendment to the Colorado Constitution increasing the minimum wage to $9.30 per hour with annual increases of 90 cents each January 1st until it reaches $12 per hour effective January 2020, and annually adjusting it thereafter for cost of living increases. This is also a very easy call for me, even though I have to say I do believe this will probably pass because so many people simply don't understand either basic economics or the proper role of government. But a high minimum wage destroys job opportunities for first-time and low-skill workers, and it particularly harms small and rural businesses. Its main supporters are actually unions, and you might say, why would that be? Because union workers typically earn more than the minimum wage. Well, they're doing it for two reasons. Some union contracts have a wage that is tied to the minimum wage, so if the minimum wage goes up, their wage goes up. But the main thing that the unions want to do is if they make it more expensive to hire workers, then it decreases their competition. For example, if a union worker is making $15 an hour, competing against someone who might make $8 an hour now, then a lot of people might hire the $8 an hour worker. But if the minimum wage is $12 and the union worker is still making $15, then you're more likely to hire the slightly more expensive union worker. Just another reason that the unions want to do it, and another reason that it's bad for everybody else. Amendment 70 is also a tremendously easy vote for me, but I do have to say I do expect it to pass, unfortunately. Amendment 71 is one that there's been a lot of discussion about on my radio show. I hosted a debate between two former state senators about this. It is commonly called Raise the Bar. And basically what this does is it makes it more difficult to amend the state constitution. It does it in two main ways. First of all, it requires signatures to be gathered in each state Senate district. So it requires 2% of the registered voters in each of the 35 state Senate districts in order to be able to get a measure on the ballot. And then it requires 55% voter approval to pass, although only a simple majority approval is needed to repeal an amendment that is already in the Constitution. Now, this measure is not perfect, and it's a subject of much debate among well-meaning people. In particular, I don't love the fact that it's still a simple majority to remove something that's already in the Constitution. And I do recognize that that compromise came as a compromise with liberals, some of whom still hope to remove Tabor from the Constitution. Nevertheless, it is much too easy to modify our state constitution. It should be harder to amend the state constitution than it is to change a state law. And that's what this does. And therefore, although it is imperfect, I am for it. And I hope that you will be as well. Again, people of goodwill can be on both sides of this thing. I would add, just for those of you who may have heard something to the contrary in ads or whatever, this does not make it easier to remove something from the Constitution. It simply leaves the current majority requirement to remove something from the Constitution as it already is. Let's go next to Amendment 72, which for me at least is on a different piece of paper. And what this is a very, very large tobacco tax increase. Amendment 72 raises taxes on a pack of cigarettes from 84 cents to $2.59 and substantially raises taxes on other tobacco products as well, earmarking the money for particular uses. But again, it earmarks them in the Constitution. It's not a law that can be changed as needed by legislators. Tobacco taxes, ironically, addict government to smoking. Also, tobacco taxes are the most regressive taxes around, since a disproportionate percentage of smokers have lower than average incomes. Taking $300 million a year from low-income Coloradans is something that you would think even Democrats would be against. And I, in general, am against sin taxes as well. And therefore, again, another easy decision for me. I am against Amendment 72. Proposition 106 is commonly known as end-of-life options, or assisted suicide is what people who are against it call this one. And it allows a mentally competent, terminally ill patient, which means less than 6 months to live, as determined by 2 doctors, to acquire and self-administer aid in dying medication to voluntarily end his or her own life. In my opinion, control of one's own life is as fundamental a right as one can imagine. Physicians and pharmacists may refuse to participate in this plan. Opposition to so-called government involvement by conservatives generally on this issue is hypocritical, because Proposition 106 reduces government interference in the doctor-patient relationship. Also, suggestions that this will be used to kill handicapped people or so-called unwanted people, whatever that means, are equally baseless. Evidence from Oregon and Washington show very little use and no abuse of nearly identical laws, and therefore I am very strongly in favor of Proposition 106. There is no more fundamental right than being able to control your own life. Proposition 107 and 108 are related to each other. Proposition 107 would change our presidential candidate selection process from the current caucus process to a primary election. And in theory, I'm good with that. My problem with 107 is that, as you can see in the wording here, it allows unaffiliated electors to participate without declaring an affiliation with a political party. And here's my problem. It's true that the president will become president of the entire United States, but the candidates are candidates of individual political parties, which are membership organizations. And I simply don't think it's right to say that someone who isn't part of an organization should be able to vote inside that organization. We don't allow it anywhere else in life that I know of, right? You can think of your own examples where there is some organization or club or fraternal group. And would you allow someone who is not a member of that group to choose your leadership or your policies or your whatever? No, you wouldn't. And therefore, while I don't mind the idea of a presidential primary, especially after the bit of a mess that we saw in this year's caucus, I simply cannot vote against one that allows the participation of unaffiliated voters. And by the way, I say that as an unaffiliated voter. I did not get to participate this year in the Republican caucus because I am no longer a Republican and have not been for 12 years. I believe that only members of an organization should decide such important things for that organization. And then 108 is related, Proposition 108. And what this one does is it allows participation by unaffiliated voters in non-presidential primary elections. Those already exist, right? So we have primary elections for other races in Colorado other than the presidency, basically. And basically, I have the same objection here. Allowing unaffiliated voters is just not fair. And furthermore, when you're talking about a state that has all mail-in ballots, and now you're going to have to mail ballots to unaffiliated voters who didn't get them in the past, now you're talking about substantially increasing the cost to taxpayers of running the election, and you are also substantially increasing the cost to candidates of campaigning in an election. In other words, now they have to get all kinds of materials to people who aren't even members of their political party. And this makes it more likely that only wealthy candidates will run for office or will win election. Also, right now, a voter can affiliate with a party right up to Election Day and participate in a primary right up to Election Day if they were unaffiliated before. And that makes this measure unnecessary. And therefore, I am also against Proposition 108. So there you go. There are all of my votes on the issues this year. And, Mitch Morrissey says that I can't show my completed ballot. Well, actually, it's not completed, Mitch, because I have not filled out any of my votes for any of the individual candidates in individual races. Frankly, because in many of them, I don't know how I'm going to vote yet, or at least for president, I don't. In any case, I hope you have all found this a little bit useful. Feel free to share it with your friends. Feel free to email me your own thoughts and reaction. My email is ross@khow.com, ross@khow.com. And whatever happens in this election, all I can say is God bless America. Let's all keep moving forward with making this country safe for liberty and limited government and rational thinking. That's what my fight will be for, no matter what happens on November 8th.